to 250 million years, saw the very birth of civilization. 1,768 islands comprise what is now the largest province in the country, covering 5% of Philippine territory. Today, Palawan, the cradle of civilization, has become the last frontier. A land teeming with natural wonders, astounding to behold. Palawan is said to be one of 2 ecosystems in the world that ought to be protected at all costs. And it is not difficult to understand why. Tonight, we visit northern Palawan, home to one of the world's most diverse and most fragile ecosystems. Northern Palawan is a breeding ground for marine life in the Western Pacific region. Its forested areas and coral reefs provide shelter to a great variety of plants and animals, several of which have been classified as rare, threatened, or endangered, like the dugong or sea cow, a gentle mammal slowly vanishing from the coastal waters of Maquit Bay, and the marine turtle, which is also rapidly facing extinction. In northern Palawan, the land is as rich as the waters, with beach forests that adorn the sandy coastline of small islands, rich mangroves, with their tangled masses of roots harboring a myriad of aquatic life. Limestone cliffs, where ornamental palms and flowers thrive, rising from the crevices of the steep rocky slopes, and wooded areas where trees and other vegetation abound. The environment of northern Palawan is extremely sensitive. Once remote and inaccessible, it remained untouched for many, many centuries. But such vast wealth cannot remain a secret for long. Inevitably, the bounty of northern Palawan has invited elements that could easily become the seeds of its own destruction. Migrants, whose rapidly growing population threatens the environment with their unsustainable farming and fishing activities. Tourism, which could potentially turn nature into a commodity and displace indigenous tribes with the buying and selling of ancestral lands. These and other issues of culture, nature, and survival in northern Palawan tonight on Earthlink. El Nido is found on the northernmost tip of mainland Palawan, covering the island spread over Maquit Bay. Blessed with bountiful waters and lush vegetation, El Nido literally basks in the sunshine. Situated outside of Philippine cyclone belt, the area has not been hit by a typhoon in over 30 years. Much of the diverse forms of terrestrial and marine life in El Nido find their origin from these mangrove forests, which are considered among the largest and healthiest in the whole archipelago.
For the fish, they serve as spawning areas or breeding areas. Dito sila nag-aanak at dito sila nagpapalaki ng kanilang anak bago umalis at tumungo sa dagat. Sa ibon naman, may mga nesting place sila dito. Pero ang pinakamagandang nagagawa ng mangrove sa atin ay protection. Pareho, protection mula sa malalaking waves upang ang ating kakahuyan at ang ating mga lupa ay hindi maagnas o ma-erode. Mula naman sa taas, protection din parang ang mga lupang naaagnas ay masala at ito ay hindi pumunta sa dagat nang sa gayon ang ating corals ay hindi masira.
In some areas, however, pockets of mangroves are fast disappearing because they have also become a habitat for yet another breed of life, migrants. Artemio Capones claims to be the first settler in Cabigsing, which was a strip of mangrove forest when he began clearing it in 1982.
Ang itsura nitong Cabigsing na ito, mistulang gubat ito, puro bakhawan to, pagatpat. Ngayon ako ang kauna-unahan nagdiscover dito. Nagbahay-bahay na ako, bahay kubo. Nung lumipas ang mga 2 taon na narito na ako, biglang dumami ang bahay rito.
Situated just outside the town proper, there are now over 40 squatter families in Cabigsing, a figure that continues to grow as stories about El Nido's rich fishing grounds attract newcomers from provinces near and far. Ignorant of environmental laws, many of these settlers have become unwitting agents of destruction, cutting down trees for houses and mangroves for fuel, tearing down natural rock formations, and maintaining an inadequate waste disposal system where the refuse are washed into the open sea. Activities that have caused great concern among the more eco-friendly citizens in the area.
If you have been to the depressed area dito, you will see kung gaano magkatabi-tabi ang bahay nila. Kasi parang sila ang bottleneck namin, even though how much we try na in our own small way na ipagandahin or maintain, kung sila is, we find out that it's not easy to teach environmental ethics to poor people because their first concern is their next meal.
For years, many generations of settlers have made El Nido their land of milk and honey, comprising almost half of its 21,000 residents. Despite its wealth of natural resources, El Nido remains to be a 6th-class municipality, where productive skills center mainly on farming and fishing. Outside of its marine and forest products, El Nido is dependent on urban centers like Manila and Puerto Princesa for almost all of its consumer goods. These supplies are ferried in a batil, which comes to transport goods and people to El Nido 3 times a week.
Kung akong tatanungin ninyo, sabi ko is El Nido is 20 years away from the civilization. Kasi we have no good roads from Puerto Princesa going to El Nido. Marami ng politiko ang nangako noon gagawin ng kalsada. Pero hanggang ngayon, hindi pa rin naayos yung kalsada na yan. So that is one of the major problems that we have. Next is the health. We have only one doctor with 21,000 people. Paano may address yung health problem ng El Nido? Tapos yung education, no? Marami kaming kulang ng mga school buildings para sa education.
To top it all, El Nido has to deal with a growing number of settlers and transients, many of whom have brought with them unsustainable practices, which threaten to deplete both land and marine resources.
Dito, ang problema namin is yung kaingin, illegal kaingin. Mga migrants, pati na rin taga rito, plus yung illegal fishing. Actually, yung illegal fishing, hindi naman taga rito. say people coming from Lucena, Masbate, Quezon, Batangas, Mindoro, and Cavite, silang pumapasok sa area namin.
Kaingin, or slash and burn farming, is a common method of clearing agricultural land in El Nido. Although discouraged by law, the practice continues on a controlled basis to give way to rice, kamote, and other cash crops. The destruction of watersheds is nothing new to El Nido. It was not too long ago when its forests echoed with the sound of chainsaw and falling timber. Today, barren mountain slopes serve as constant reminders of their rape by commercial logging. But although big-time operations no longer exist, the harvesting of trees continues in another form.
What is happening now is timber poaching because yung hindi mo rin mapigilan ng mga tao na kumuha sila ng yung mga kailangan nila na pang-ayos o pagpagawa ng mga kanilang mga bahay.
Timber cutting by the local populace is difficult to curb because poverty has made them dependent on the nearby forest for sustenance, which is why the practice is tolerated to a certain extent.
Ang hinuhuli dito ng batas, pag ang kahoy na dadalhin dito sa bayan, bulyong, na inaakala nila na susubra na sa materialis ng isang bahay. Kasi ang nangyayari doon, gusto na. Hindi na pangsarili.
Of far greater concern are the waters of El Nido, where coral reefs are relentlessly pulverized by dynamite fishing.
Ang mga settlers, I think, ang pinaka nagbibigay ng danger sa environment. Lalo na yung mga fishermen na galing sa ibang probinsya na wala na silang mapangisdaan doon. Pumupunta sila rito, magpapatay ng bahay, maggagawa ng bangka, mangingisda. Kung wala, mahirapan sila, gumagamit sila ng dinamita. Sa tingin ko, sila ang nagbibigay ng pinakamalaking panganib sa environment.
These bold intrusions into Bakwit Bay have spelled disaster, especially to small-time fishermen.
Minsan sila, dahil ang kinakawilan namin bahura yan coral. Ngayon kung pumasok sila, alam nila bahura, paputok na lang yan. Hindi nila tinitingnan ilalim, basta hulog na lang hulog ng paputok yan.
In 1992, the DNR set up the El Nido Marine Reserve Project with funding from private institutions. For 3 years, the project scored high points in controlling unlawful economic activities. Unfortunately, funds have run out, and while environment officials are busy sourcing financial support to revive the project, plastics continue to plague the defenseless waters, wiping away not only tons of edible marine life with every explosion, but also ravaging the greatest gift nature has bestowed upon El Nido.
Oh, we have seen beaches in Malaysia, in Thailand, also in Florida, South America, but I think it's one of the most beautiful places here. And we saw terrible coasts where diamond fishing was. We were
surprised to find everything dead in the sea.
Shocking. And then we saw so wonderful corals and fishes and our water underworld. And I can only say, your capital is nature. Protect it, protect it, protect it.
Fortunately, environmental protection now tops the list of priorities in El Nido, especially after studies revealed that the area's greatest potential lies in ecotourism. Outside of the reefs destroyed by dynamite fishing, the waters of Bakwit Bay have remained exceptionally clear, bursting with the shapes and colors of fascinating marine life. Add to these the pristine white beaches, breathtaking wonders yet to be discovered by the world at large. Realizing this, El Nido has begun capitalizing on nature for its much-needed revenue, leaving conservationists to wonder what kind of change tourism will eventually bring, development or degradation. If God had a favorite place on earth, it would probably be El Nido. With its unique limestone formations, carved and weathered since the dawning of creation, giving birth to 1,001 natural wonders. Beyond the white sandy beaches, the waters of Buckreef Bay sparkle in deep shades of blue and green, cradling a rare selection of marine life, the likes of which have slowly disappeared in other parts of the world.
For so long, almost everybody knows that Palawan is, we call it the last refuge, the Philippines, especially environmentally. And it's true. Palawan is the last refuge because that's the only place where I see now in its entirety, in a magnitude of Palawan, gives you the, call it a more pristine, undisturbed, relatively undisturbed areas wherein the flora and fauna are still intact. They are in their natural habitats, least disturbed.
With a growing global awareness on environmental protection, conservationists have trained their sights on Palawan, particularly on El Nido, which, because of its unique ecosystem, was declared a marine reserve in 1991. The El Nido Marine Reserve has been divided into three main management zones. The core zone, or the no-touch zone, where the most sensitive portions of the ecosystem are isolated and protected from human intrusion. The buffer zone, where only traditional economic activities that do not threaten the core zone are allowed. And the multiple-use zone, which provides areas for tourist development. In El Nido, only 4 islands have been categorized under the multiple-use zone, 3 of which have been leased out to 10 Knots Development Corporation, whose high-end resorts in Minilog and Pangalucian have been counted as among the prime attractions of El Nido.
Dati ang El Nido, kunti lang ang tao nung magkaroon ng resort. Dahil lang sa turismo nga, dumami ang tao. Ang totoo niyan, halos hindi nawawala ng turista ang El Nido sa buong taon. Halos sa 5 o 10 taon na nakalipas, ganun umiikot talaga yon. Kahit na tag-ulan, meron talagang mga bisita.
What makes the situation in El Nido different from other tourist destinations is the fact that it has been declared a marine reserve for purposes of environmental protection. As such, resort operators are faced with a challenge of satisfying 2 independent trends: conservation and tourism development.
You must remember, when we talk of tourism, your capital is the environment. And normally what happens is that it's like the tragedy of the commons, you know. People would want to reap from the environment and not put anything back. I guess that's where Tenats is unique, because we invest. We know that the environment is our capital, and we invest much in protecting it.
Although the resorts have existed way before El Nido was declared a sanctuary, 10 Knots claims to have been a staunch advocate of ecology long before it became in fashion.
The natural environment is what we consider the main attraction of our resorts. Our resorts are mere facilities. What attracts the guests to El Nido is the natural beauty of the place. So it is in our self-interest to protect the environment, to keep the attraction alive as long as possible.
For instance, water conservation has become a major undertaking for both Minilok and Pangalucian. In order to reduce pressure on the watersheds of El Nido, the resorts are equipped with desalinating plants where seawater is processed to be fit for drinking. Also installed were sewage treatment plants which recycle liquid waste for flushing and irrigation, while the solid portions are turned into organic fertilizer. Outside of its own waste management program, TENATS, through the El Nido Foundation, has also been actively supporting nearby communities in their own environmental projects. One of these is the installation of a water system in the fishing village of Bebeladan.
The concept of that is that for the community to have their water, and in exchange for that, they would declare their area a watershed, meaning reforestation, and no more slash and burn farming.
Kita po natin, umabot po tayo ng 99% survival rate sa
It is emphasized that the project is not a dole-out. Through the foundation, 10 communal and 28 family-owned faucets have been installed in Bebeladan. But in return, 100 hectares of the Mainlong watershed would have to be reforested and maintained by the community, an offshoot of what the resorts like to call responsible tourism.
The issues of development are really issues of how to deal with poverty. So we offer tourism as an alternative strategy for development, for livelihood of people.
With tourism providing the magnet for profitable activities in El Nido, it is not surprising that islands outside of the multiple-use zone have also been eyed for development. One burning issue in El Nido is the controversy over Matinloc and Taputan, two islands within the core zone. In 1984, a religious group called the Movement of Mary came to Matinloc and built a Marian shrine to which miraculous cures were soon attributed. These reports attracted pilgrims to the area, resulting in the construction of a bigger chapel in 1993. By this time, El Nido had been declared a sanctuary, and the island of Matinloc a part of the no-touch zone. This development stirred a howl of protest among Palawan-based NGOs, especially after learning that the movement had begun the construction of resort facilities on nearby Taputan, an island which was also within the core zone and was being claimed as ancestral domain by native Tagbanwas. The issue remains to be a hotbed of dispute, the main contention being, should any permanent structure be allowed to exist in a core zone? And given that, should any further development be permitted?
The stand of the DNR really is that that structure is illegal, and we have already told them to stop any development, and that they will be penalized for the violations that they have done. Now, if they still feel that people who want to pray should be able to go to the islands, our recommendation is set up their facilities, their dormitories, their hotels in the mainland. And then people who would like to use the island as a pilgrimage place can take the boats and go to the island. In that way, you do not destroy the ecology of the island, and you can still use it for prayer.
One served in the imperial courts of ancient China, The nido soup remains a prized and very expensive delicacy. Made from the nest of an exotic bird called the swiftlet, only 3 countries in the world are known to be the sources of this rare ingredient. One of them is the Philippines, where an entire island group had been named after a trade peculiar to its people, El Nido. El Nido, which means the nest, is home to the swiftlet, a kind of bird known to the natives as Balinsasayaw. Each morning, armed only with a dagger, a length of rope, and a pouch, hunters like Romy and Francisco sail out to the limestone cliffs of El Nido in search of the precious nest of the Balinsasayaw. For many generations, nest gathering has become a lucrative source of income for the residents of El Nido. Sold to middlemen at 120 pesos per gram, the nido nest is almost worth its weight in gold.
Sa akin sarili ko, sa 6 na buwan, kumikita ako sa mga 130,000. 6 months.
Pushadores, as the nest gatherers are called, risk life and limb each day, scaling the jagged edges of the limestone cliffs where the elusive birds make their home. The skill is passed on from master to novice in a learning process where there is no room for mistake.
Basta mahulog ka dyan, patay ka na. Dalawang di pa lang hulugan mo, yari ka na, patay ka talaga dyan. Kasi tamaan, puro bato eh.
Hunters acquire the rights to gather nests by bidding for a concession granted by the municipal government. There are about 150 registered cave owners in El Nido alone, the fees for which provide a large chunk of the local revenue. Because of their economic value, the Nido caves have become a magnet for poachers. But while the job is dangerous enough for seasoned climbers, it is even more precarious for thieves.
Nadidisgrasya dyan, yung magnanakaw, hindi katulad sa amin, ingat kami, sarili namin yun. Kapurado yun, takot mahuli. Maabutan.
Yari siya.
Halimbawa, nandun ka sa loob ng kuiba, mahulugan ka ng bato, patay ka rin doon, hindi ka makalabas eh.
The coveted nido is made from the secretion of the Balinsasayaw, intricately woven against the sloping roots of small caves. To protect the nests from being depleted, government has limited gathering activities to a period between January and April, just before the birds lay their eggs.
Mayo nangingitlog na yan. Kailangan pagdating ng Mayo, tapusan ng June, huwag mo nang harbisin kasi kailangan makalipad yung sisiw. Ngayon, kung harbisin mo yan, hindi makapagsisiw, wala nang pakinabang. Patay na lahat.
But because of the increasing demand for nido, some hunters are known to disturb the nests even during the close season. Something which old-timers view not so much as breaking the law, but as going against plain common sense.
Yung iba, maski may itlog pa, harvest na. Yung mali yun. Yung sa amin talagang kuwan, pagdating ng ganun, tinitigilan namin makalipad muna bago harvestin. Minsan pag inalisan mo ng may sisiw, nagatampor yung ibon na yan. Hindi, pagbalik mo sa sunod na taon, wala ka ng pakinabang.
Recent studies have shown that the yield of birds' nests have decreased over the years, suggesting that the swiftlets may have been driven away from their nesting sites or are close to being endangered. Because it is almost impossible to prohibit the gathering of nido, government is counting on the strict implementation of hunting seasons to allow the birds to regenerate.
We support livelihood, but at the same time, we should not destroy the ecological base of that livelihood. If the assessment right now shows that in fact we have gone beyond the carrying capacity and the birds are already endangered, then we have to have what we call rest periods, total ban, till again the ecological base is strong enough to again allow harvesting.
Meanwhile, Nido hunters continue to compete for a dwindling supply of nests, ignoring the perils that face them from day to day, hoping to earn enough so that their own children will not have to inherit the job.
Mahirap mga nabuhay kasi yan. Mga anak ko hindi ko tinuturuan yan. Gustong-gusto ng mga anak kong sumama sa akin pero ayaw ko. Delikado eh. Sabi ko, buti pa mag-aral ka, magtrabaho ka sa labas. Huwag lang mag-akyat ng kuiba.
You might think this is a scene straight out of a safari in Africa. Wrong. This is Kalawit, an island in northern Palawan where African animals thrive and roam freely, just as they would in the savannas of their own native land. Kalawit was declared a game reserve in 1976 in response to Kenya's appeal to member countries of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature to provide a sanctuary for the propagation of endangered African wildlife. 8 species of African animals were introduced in 1977, and from the initial stock of 104 heads, the reserve now maintains over 500 animals of African origin. Kalawit also plays host to some of Palawan's endangered wildlife, like the mouse deer, the smallest hoofed mammal in the world, a gentle and playful creature which has been mercilessly hunted down for game almost to the point of extinction. Bred in captivity since 1985, at least 30 mouse deers have been born within the safe confines of Kalawit. Also thriving are the Kalamian deer, whose head count had dropped to 25 in 1976. Today, some 1,000 of them roam the grazing areas of the game reserve, coexisting peacefully with the African beasts, as well as with other forms of wildlife endemic to the province.
Ang unahong considerations na binigyan nila riyan ay yung mga group of animals na sabi nila can live in one association, meaning walang predators na kasama dahil ang pinaka main purpose nito raw ay for reproduction ng itong mga game animals na ito.
However, not all alien species introduced to Kalawit were able to survive their new environment. First to perish was the gazelle, which fell prey to disease and wound infection. In 1995, Dr. Mundita Lim of the Wildlife Rescue Center led a team of volunteers to a medical mission in Kalawit.
When we did a study, the Kalamian deer had better body build. They were healthier than the African animals. The impalas have grown thinner, the giraffes had foot problems, and some of the zebras had problems with parasites.
Disease and infection remain to be the primary causes of mortality among the animals in Kalawit, a threat compounded by the absence of a resident veterinarian and the physical degradation of the game reserve.
It has to be maintained. Because I understand, when it first started, they had a lot of money to maintain the area. So there was no problem with cutting off the bamboo growths or maintaining a savanna type of grassland. But later on, when they cut the budget, so everything, the natural vegetation started growing, and so it affected the animals.
Jurisdiction jurisdiction over Calauit has changed hands several times in the last 20 years. As of 1995, operations have been turned over to the Palawan Council for Sustainable Development, with the Reserves Employees Cooperative managing the project. An initial capital of 7 million pesos had to be stretched accordingly to provide for the upkeep of the 4,000-hectare sanctuary, with its scores of wildlife and some 60 personnel, barely enough to preserve the sanctuary from rapid deterioration. The situation on the island is aggravated by the presence of over 100 families known collectively as the Balik Calauit movement. When Calauit was declared a game reserve 20 years ago, residents of its 2 barangays were relocated and supposedly paid for the land they had lost. BCM members claim it was a rip-off.
Wala kami nagawa kasi ang kausap namin noon dito ng panahon ng Marcelo, laging kanyo ng baril. Pagkatapos, wala nyo inalis yung karapatan ng mga tao. Kaya wala rin kaming katuwiran na lumaban. Wala rin kaming katuwiran ng mga tuwiran.
BCM members claim the relocation sites were inhospitable to agriculture, which is why, after the turnover of government in 1986, they decided to return to Calauit, much to the opposition of the people running the sanctuary.
The presence of the BCM there is illegal. It's squatting on government land now. Even if they used to own those properties, pumayag na silang bilhin sa kanila eh. They were already paid for that. Kaya lang hindi rin natin masyadong biglang mapaalis. Yun nga, ang argument nila matigas din eh. Sino bang mas importante, tao o hayop?
As the debate rages on, the acute shortage of funds is becoming more and more apparent in Calauit. It has been over a year since President Fidel Ramos visited Calauit and promised to earmark 60 million pesos for transforming the island into what he described to be the most beautiful ecotourism destination in Asia. The potential is there, but in the face of threats to sustainability, Calauit is racing against time, waiting for government to release the crucial funds that would support its good intentions. Banwang Daan is one of 2 barangays in Coron Island, where Tagbanwas make up 95% of the population. The Tagbanwas are a gentle, seafaring people whose traditions bind them closely to the nature spirits, whom they still believe inhabit every nook and cranny of Coron. In Banwang Daan, the Tagbanwas continue to pay homage to a pair of deities called Matambak and Makarere, who watch over them from the caves overlooking the open sea.
Yung matambak na yan, at saka yung kaispart na yan, yung isang kuiba na yung malaki, bali dalawa sila. Yun ang tawag doon sa kuiba na yun ay si Makarara. Yung si Makarara na yun ang tumatanaw dito sa karagatan, bali pinakagwardya dito sa dagat. Pag medyo makita niya mayroong mga masasamang loob, hinuhudyatan niya ito si Matambak. Bali silang dalawang maharap sa mga pirata, katulad ng masasamang loob.
The Tagbanwas consider the waters that surround Coron Island as sacred, because from its bounty, countless generations of their people were nourished and sustained. just as venerated are the cliffs and mountains, where swiftlets make their nests, leaving enough for the needle gatherers to harvest. Here, they have thrived peacefully amidst the rugged simplicity of their island home, until the seas began to echo with the deafening death knell of dynamite.
Sa ngayon, ang ginagamit katulad sa ginagamit ng mga dayuhan, ginagamit nila ang mga dinamita halos araw-araw. Nag-aano sila sa aming karagatan, doon sila nangingisda at kanilang dinudurog ang mga bahura.
The Tagbanwas claim these illegal fishing methods are being perpetrated by migrant fishermen who have settled along the coastal areas of Coron.
Yung problema ng migrants is a very real problem dun sa area, no? When before, migrants just came in seasonally, no? Usually the migrants would just come in for when the ocean is good and maybe catch a couple of fishes and then go, no? And now it's a different case. So the migrants have already actually established settlements on the island.
Now numbering by the hundreds, these migrants have not only displaced the Tagbanwas from their ancestral land, but are also competing for marine resources using methods that threaten the survival of men and nature.
Ang mga isda na ito, kung mapupuksa, ay talagang wala nang pakinabang kahit na yung mga anak namin at saka kami ng hirap.
Even as they fear for their beloved waters, the Tagbanwas of Coron realize they are no longer safe even on dry land. Many Tagbanwas wake up in the morning only to find out that the land they have inherited from their forebears are no longer theirs. Members of the Tagbanwa Foundation, through the help of NGOs, have compiled testimonies of natives who have been displaced by outsiders, who have come waving tax declarations that signified ownership of the land, or of Tagbanwas who were tricked into selling or swapping their land for ridiculously lopsided deals, all because they are perceived to be ignorant and defenseless.
Masakit po talaga kasi kasi mali kumpara sa ibang klaseng tao. Kami yung pinakamaliit na klaseng tao dito sa amin. Sa simula, siyempre masakit po yun kasi talagang duduruduruin ka, apakapakan ka, yung lahat gagawin sa'yo. Pero sa akin, nung itong barang huli, sabi ko, dapat hindi naman ako magagalit sa kanila eh. Dapat nga maging hamon pa sa akin yung ganun. Para lumaban, yung balang araw, may pakita rin sa kanila na yung mga taong pinandidirian nila, yung inapakapakan nila ay lumalaban din at saka may karapatan ding lumaban sa kanila.
For the peace-loving Tagbanwas, fighting back meant seeking help in upholding their ancestral rights. While most of them are literate, the Tagbanwas of Coron Island are not highly educated and have learned to depend on sympathetic parties to pursue their claims.
Nung pumasok kami doon, we found a situation where the caves no longer belong to them, no? The caves were leased out annually to the rich families of the mainland, no? You'd find out a local government actually leasing out rights over traditional caves. And of course, no, they were very worried na pati yung lakes, these traditional lakes that they have, na siguro in the whole of the Philippines, doon lang meron ito, might be the subject of interest of other business people in the future, no? So nung pumasok kami doon, they asked us to assist them get any kind of documents, any kind of papers for that matter, para man lang ma-recognize yung kanilang traditional rights.
Expectedly, the local government denies having a hand in the alleged selling of Tagbanwa property.
Ayaw namin apigin ang mga Tagbanwa. Kahit na aming punong bayan, yan ang lagi sinasabi. Yung mga katulad yung barangay captains na mga non-Christians, pag pinapatawag namin sa opisina rito, pinagtatanong namin, sino po ba ang mga tao yan na pumapasok dyan? Tinatanong namin. We are very conscious of knowing them also, those people. Baka inaapi yung mga Tagbanwa. Pero yung tungkol sa isla, na para pupuntahan ng mga estanghero, para kukunin doon, eh talagang kami ang magiging kalaban ng mga tao niya.
Marginalized for generations, it has not been easy for the Tagbanwas to trust government intervention. Incidents of conflicting views are not uncommon, like in a recent bout with illegal loggers.
May mga ilang araw na nagdaan, mayroon kaming nahuli na nag-illegal dito sa aming lugar. Ang nangyari po sa nahuli namin ito, akto naming nahuli doon sa pinagkukulan. Ngayon, inaano namin sa Rain Armies ni Socorro. Hindi man lang ito na aksyon na ididimanda yung nag-utos na namamutol ng kahoy sa aming lugar. Pinakawalan lang.
However, the Centro in Coron says this was not the case.
Nagresponde kaagad kami, nahuli yung mga namutol, at nasampaan namin ng kaso yan. So, yung kaso ngayon, nakapending sa sala ng Municipal Circuit Trial Court Judge. Unfortunately, kamakailan yon, last month, sa kasamaang palad, namatay yung judge natin.
The Centro says they're only waiting for a new judge to be appointed to expedite the case. Meanwhile, the timber poachers remain at large because
yung mga sinakdal namin, yung mga dinembanda namin, naanuan sila nakapag-post sila ng bail. Tinanggap naman nung nasirang judge. So ngayon, hanggang doon pa lang yung sinasabing pinakawalan o pinabayaan yung kaso. Palagay ko, hindi totoo yan.
Their rude awakening to changes brought about by outsiders have taught the Tagbanwas of Coron a valuable lesson. That their redemption lies not in continuous isolation, but in empowerment, like in claiming for ancestral domain.
Right now, they're trying to fight for the recognition of their ancestral domains as well as ancestral waters. Now, this is the unique part, no? They're the very first indigenous community in the Philippines who have actually filed for a claim of ancestral waters aside from ancestral lands.
These waters comprise the ancestral fishing grounds of the Tagbanwa, whose protection is vital to their physical and spiritual survival as a people.
Ang pananaw nila doon sa kalikasan at sa mga kayamanan, parang napaka-importante sa kanila. Iniingatan nila yun na hindi nila dapat lapitan dahil rin-respekto nila gaya sa mga sagradong lugar. Yun ay hindi nila basta-basta napasukan o lapitan.
If and when the Tagbanwas' rights over their ancestral land and waters are recognized by the government, it will be a pioneering triumph for all indigenous tribes in the country, and an affirmation that, in many ways, indigenous people are still the best stewards of their environment.
Had it not been for the Tagbanwas, Coron would have been what? Would have been a wasteland by now. If you go to the place, the evidence is very clear. It is the only island that has close canopy forest left. It is the only island that has very minimal stress, environmental stress, in spite of the lack of government intervention, and maybe even an NGO intervention. No? We owe it all to the Tagbanwa as well.
Baka